Hi, this is Pat Martino with you in the Doodlin Lounge.
All right, thank you so much for that. Pat Martino introducing the Doodlin Lounge. Pete Fallico here, your host and master of ceremonies. And in the background, a version of Willie Dixon's Spoonful, coming from Iron City, the Iron City band headed up by guitarist Charlie Apicella. Their newest release on Zoho Records will be the focus of this Doodlin Lounge program. Our opening track will be the title track, Big Boss. So ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce the band. Charlie Apicella on guitar with Dan Kostelnik playing organ, drumming from Alan Corzin. Freddie Hendricks is the trumpeter that you're hearing. Stephen Riley, tenor saxophonist. And on congas, Mayra Casales. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Charlie Apicella. The tune Big Boss from our guest in the Doodlin Lounge, Charlie Apicella and Iron City. And we are fortunate to have Charlie on the other end of this line. Charlie, welcome to my Doodlin Lounge. It's just a little pretend thing. We're imagining you on our bandstand here. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. I'm always imagining myself on a bandstand, so it works for me.
That's your comfort zone, huh?
This is an honor to be here. I'm very excited. I love your show, and I love you're really keeping the word alive here, the real music.
Well, I'm trying to, and thanks to folks like yourself, you're coming out with Iron City. That's the name of the group. How long have you guys been together?
I have had this band. I started the band when I was a student at the University of Massachusetts, and I'd say that was about 10 years ago. I've now been with my drummer, Alan Corzin, for 8 years, and we have played, we do between 100 and 120, 130 gigs a year. So Al and I have played more than 1,000 gigs together.
Wow.
And so we're just starting to get to the point where we're locking up, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Now, are you always with an organ, and do you tour with the same guy like Dave Maddock and then go in the studio and use Kostelnik, or how do you determine who's in the band as the organist?
Right now we are working exclusively with Dan Kostelnik. Dan has he's a generation older than me, so he has a very impressive background that we are really able to capitalize on. He's got a ton of stories that he always tells us about Billy James, one of our favorite drummers.
Yes.
And how the things that he learned from Big John Patton. So Dan is, one of the top call guys here in New York, and we're very fortunate to have him as a key collaborator.
Yeah.
In what we do.
He always tells me that his cousin is a better organ player than him, but
right.
Dan has got that feel. Dan really is a first call for a lot of folks, and we're very fortunate to have you with Dan in this Iron City group. Now, tell me, going back to the bandstand statement, are you able to sell a lot of product off the bandstand in this day and age?
Oh, absolutely. CD sales, physical CD sales, are always done at gigs, and then I do very well with my digital sales as well. So part of the draw, part of the thing that enticed me to now be a member of the Zoho Music stable of artists is the opportunity to get international distribution. So what I've learned is that internationally, physical CDs are really the way to go. Are the in other words, they're what sells more than digital. So these are all things that I've been learning, but it's definitely the marketplace is shifting. Some people think it's bad in terms of things like Spotify and streaming, but I really like to think that the verdict is still out yet on these things.
I agree with you. Even with YouTube, people who want permission and then don't tape and don't video. Why not? I mean, it's about exposure in this day and age, and with the social media the way it is, the whole idea is to get that name, Charlie Apicella, out there and in the ears of music lovers, There's no precedent, really. I mean, the problem I think that people run into is that they're not educated as to how you're supposed to maintain control of your material, how you're supposed to get money for your material. Yeah.
So because there's no precedent, I mean, this stuff is really developing every day. Every time a new company starts up with a new idea, the rules start to change. So I've been really being very active in trying to stay ahead of the curve and trying to just stay on top of the wave. I go to meetings at the Musicians Union here in New York. There's a lot of different seminars and classes and workshops between them. There's something out here called the Jazz Connect Conference. I've really learned a lot this time around making this record and being involved with a record label. Yeah. I think that's all well and good, but remember, you are the artist, and the majority of your concentration and focus should be on your artistry. I see people getting, caught up in the whole business aspect of it, and
Well, you've got to find that happy medium, Charlie Apicella. You've got to decide you're the star, you're the guitarist, you're the person that is creating this music, and you have to trust those around you to distribute it and make it available. It's a tough call, like you say. The whole industry is dynamic, it's in flux, but you got to ride the waves, man. You got to go with it.
I've become I have 2 points of view on that. My first is that I am young and I'm just starting out, and I see it as an advantage that I'm starting out in a time when the economy is less strong than some folks remember it being. So I figure if I can be this successful in a poor economy, I'm just really looking forward to what's going to develop for me in the next 5 or 6 or 10 years when the economy, inevitably swings back to a better condition. So that's my first point of view. My second point of view is that the Internet allows you to be in total control. And it's very challenging to always be on top of every potential revenue stream. So in one hand, you do spend a lot of time. The way I view it is that I do administrative work and I try to get money to keep the band alive. No different, by the way, than Duke Ellington used to do. Duke Ellington, at one point, there was a tipping point when he realized that the band performing was not supporting the band existing. And he was one of the very first musicians to own his own publishing. So he had a publishing company, and he found another revenue stream by publishing his original compositions, and people in that sheet music format that was very popular, back in the day. So there is a very good precedent set. James Brown is another person. Frank Zappa is another person that I really admire their ability to keep their bands working, and because they were able to make money by having knowledge of different aspects of the music industry.
As a track entitled In the Grass, penned by our guest in this episode of the Doodlin Lounge, guitarist Charlie Apicella. The band is entitled Iron City, and their newest release is out on Zoho Records. We are going to now move to a tune that they did on their previous release that was called The Business. This is a Ben Dixon composition called Cantaloupe Woman from Charlie Apicella and Iron City in the Doodlin Lounge.
Hi, this is Ben Dixon with you in the Doodlin Lounge. Thanks for listening.
Our guest in the Doodlin Lounge, guitarist Charlie Apicella. Thanks again, Charlie, for the music and the conversation in this episode of my show. You say you're young and you're starting out and you're really pleased with the position that you are and what you represent these days. Tell us where you see yourself in the spectrum, and if that spectrum might be on one end those that follow in the tradition, and on the other end those that are really stepping forward and trying to create something new. I mean, there's a lot of history in your playing. Where do you feel you are in this spectrum?
That's a great question, and the business stuff is very dry. This is the sort of stuff I really like to talk about. I have I've always really been into history, and there's such a rich history in music, and the history of music is really made by each individual person who makes it. So there's a whole history book written on Jimmy Smith. There's a whole history book written on Grant Green. There's a whole history book written on Lester Young. So these people, when you really study music, it's very interesting because you can learn the progression of a person's career unto himself, and then you can read between the lines and really learn about what our country and the world was like at any given time. You know, this person put out this record in this type of climate, and so forth. And in terms of being an innovator, I was told by one of my first teachers was Yusef Lateef, and he told me that your contribution to music is simply yourself. So you really have a responsibility to be honest with yourself and learn as much as you can, and not necessarily try to fit it into any specific anything. You know, if it's very natural, in other words, for me, it's very natural for me to play music that people enjoy. So I try to become on par with people who have composed music that I enjoy. And those people are Sonny Stitt and Gene Ammons. Grant Green was a great composer. Wes Montgomery was a great composer that I really admire. My friend and mentor Dave Stryker is a great composer that I admire. And I feel that in order to be an innovator, it simply means that you're the best composer you can be.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Tell us about the classroom and academia versus experiential learning. You seem to be well-educated. I know you're in academia. What do you tell your students with respect to, being on the road and the school of hard knocks?
I'm really learning that, and some of the folks that are in my extended team, my publicist and so forth, and the record label, and again, Dave Stryker, we don't really have a Chitlin circuit anymore. A lot of the folks that I really admire learned by touring a wide swath of the country and going to these little clubs. My Chitlin circuit is very regional. So we travel from Delaware up to Massachusetts in a constant pattern of touring, and we visit these small venues. So we've me and Alan Corzin, my drummer, have been very good at simulating the conditions that our heroes took advantage of and were able to enjoy and able to develop in. So that, to me, I've always been someone who is really good at learning on my own. And the way that I approach teaching music is that the desires of the student, their own love for music, is what drives it forward. I did not go to school for music. I really sort of learned independently of my college situation. I studied in a very unique mentor-protege relationship with Dave Stryker. So that was really motivated by my own love of music and my own believing in my compositions and my message. So I'm not really the best person to necessarily talk about academia. I took several classes when I was a student at the University of Massachusetts, and I excelled in music history, and I excelled in music theory, but there was a lot of stuff that they were teaching that did not resonate with me. So I did not pursue a music degree. I mostly did a lot of playing when I was there, auditioned for ensembles. So I think education is very important, but, you know, in terms of my own education, I've gotten to a certain point, and up until very recently, I've been focusing on learning how to improvise, learning the vocabulary and the language of jazz, and learning facility on the instrument. And I was recently invited by Pat Martino to start studying with him. And that has been, you know, I'm in the midst of the very first stages of studying with him. And that has really changed my perspective on a lot of different things about music and about the guitar. So again, that's another mentor-type relationship, which is really how I do really well. I don't like I never really liked school at all. When I was a kid, I was never into going anywhere and doing anything that I was told to do. So music education for me has always been something that came from within and was not imposed by certain deadlines and so forth that you had to meet in order to get grades and all that stuff. Didn't work for me.
Charlie, I have to tell you, in all the interviews that I've done, this is a common theme, or at least I should say you hear more folks saying the same thing, that they weren't particularly happy in the classroom, that the teachers didn't understand them, and that their real love for learning was through music. So don't feel like the Lone Ranger, my man.
No, I mean, this is, I feel like the whole classroom situation is a new phenomenon, and I think it's not necessarily, you know, it has its pluses and its whatever. I mean, I really don't have an opinion one way or another.
That's all right.
Honest with you, yeah.
That's okay. That's a tune entitled Idris from Charlie Apicella's newest release on Zoho Records called Big Boss. Iron City, the name of the band, and the leader, the guitarist, Charlie Apicella, and Iron City, our guests in this episode of the Doodlin Lounge. Pete Fallico, your host and master of ceremonies. And speaking of Iron City, let's move now to the previous CD. The Business is the title of it, and this particular track simply entitled Iron City from Charlie Apicella. Charlie Apicella, our guest here in the Doodlin Lounge. We've got two of the records, most recently the Big Boss on Zoho Records that we're enjoying during this showcase of Charlie's music, and The Business, which was out on Iron City Jazz on Eastman. I really don't know, is that IronCityJazz.com is where people might get that particular CD, right, Charlie?
Yeah, you can get it. I think the only way you can really get a physical CD is if you email me.
Okay.
And I'll happily mail them to folks. But you can download whatever you want, one track at a time or the whole thing.
At the end of the show, I'll repeat this information so folks can get a hold of the music and maybe communicate with you. But I didn't ask you about the beginnings. That's okay. Tell us about the now. When you get on stage, what kind of equipment do you use? How do you like to set up? Do you position yourself near the drummer? What does your stage plot look like?
I am not a techie. I'm very... I don't really think about stuff too much. I guess I kind of like the idea of being able to pick up any guitar and do anything on it. So, although I am very particular about my guitar itself, I play Eastman guitars, and I like a very clean, powerful tone. I really try to pattern my sound on Kenny Burrell or Grant Green. And I use when I record, I use a polytone amp, which is very clean and powerful. And I never use any effects. When I play gigs, I use a ZT Lunchbox amp, which is a very small amp, but it has a similar quality of a polytone. And with that amp, I plug it into an extension speaker. But again, no effects. I just use one guitar cable and plug it into the amp, and I am not too particular about anything. When it comes to setting up, I think I have become what's a little bit of a bad habit in terms of performing, in that I actually like to be looking at the band. So I really like to have my back turned to the audience, which is not a good thing. So that works in some places, but it doesn't work in others. Sometimes you can turn and put the drummer sort of so you're kind of facing each other. But I really like to sit and be not much of a performer in terms of anybody to really look at.
Now, that's tough to admit, Charlie.
Yeah, it's hard to, there's always a balance, but it goes in stages. Like sometimes, in the past, I would be always standing way out in front on the stage, in front of the band, and really kind of emoting physically. But nowadays, I seem to be really sitting a lot more and focusing. It has to do with focus for me. I like to focus very intensely. So there's a balance. The way I find the balance is by addressing the audience a lot, always stopping between tunes, explaining what tunes we're playing. Things like that really get the personal touch, and then let me kind of, when the music starts, I kind of recede back into my own little world where I'm focusing and not addressing the audience.
Yeah.
Because it's very important for me to engage people, and it's very important for me to play music that people enjoy and present it in a way that they enjoy and can relate to. So I really have no desire to be aloof in any way. It's just that where I am with my playing right now requires such a great amount of concentration to execute the things I'm trying to play and so forth. So that is really what drives it for me.
Very cool. Very cool. Charlie, we've come to that point where we're going to finish off the program with some more of your great music. We thank you so much for your time and this great conversation. And I hope folks appreciate your honesty and your candor, and keep that in mind when they come out to hear Charlie Apicella and Iron City. Again, the very, very best to you, man, and good luck with these recordings on Zoho.
Thank you so much. It's been a great journey the last couple of years. I've been here in New York, and it's quite an honor to get to sit down and talk with you. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. I mean, any young, up-and-coming musician that likes the groove that we like here in the Doodlin Lounge is going to get a call. And we thank you, Charlie, so much for showing up and discussing your ideas on the music and, of course, sharing your music from Iron City, the two releases we've sampled, The Business and the most recent one on Zoho Records called Big Boss. Let's mention the musicians, Dave Maddock and Dan Kostelnik on organ. Alan Corzin has been the drummer. Stephen Riley, the saxophonist that you're hearing right now. Mayra Casales on congas. We also have had Freddie Hendricks, a trumpet voice in there. And on one track, Amy Bateman brought in the violin. So grab a hold of this music and you are sure to be entertained. Charlie Apicella. If you want to get a hold of the band, it's ironcityjazz.com, and Charlie directly is charlieapicella.com. Pete Fallico here saying, go forth and do good.